Thank you for the introductions. Good morning, everybody, or almost good afternoon. I think it's okay afternoon. But it's been a great set of sessions this morning. Everything kind of centered around some of the new things that are coming up, and as we said that Samir announced in the morning. So this is another session, the same lines, but hopefully we'll get a little provocative here. Saw the set of panelists that came together for this session, and I'll be honest with you all, I don't know if I'll ask the scripted questions or something different, but everybody's been warmed up to that, so appreciate it. So AI epiphany is what we're talking about, but let's be honest, right? Most of the enterprises are after this bandwagon, but I think the honeymoon is over and it's getting rewritten as well. We've moved from the 𝗲 of ChatGPT to the how of the balance sheet today, and we should be talking about how AI will really upend analytics, but adoption still remains very amorphous. So how do we tackle that is top of the agenda today for this discussion. We've got, as said, a couple of, I don't know if you notice the intros here, but a couple of providers and a couple of enterprise leaders as well. So we'll dig in a little bit about, are providers really selling the future, or are enterprises really struggling to fix the past? So this is a conflict situation that we'll try and handle today. And we're here to rewrite the playbook. Like everyone said, there's a 140-page playbook that everyone's going to get. So we'll see how this relates to that playbook as well. So let's dig right in. So questions, let's get into the conflict between providers and enterprise leaders. I'll start with the provider side, if you will. You both, Pankaj and Prabhakar, you both provide the guts and the products and solutions. Let's be honest here with the audience. Is the amorphous state of AI adoption actually a failure of the providers? Are the providers really selling Ferraris to the organizations that don't have paved roads yet? Why is there such a massive gap between a successful pilot and a scalable solution?
Thank you for that. Literally provocative. So let me answer that in two ways. So the first part, are the providers failing to sell the enterprises? I would say both yes and no. Right? Let's be brutally honest. I would say no because for us, enterprises and service providers, it's a two-in-a-box model. Yeah? So service providers need to be seen as enablers, and enterprises need to be brutally honest in terms of are they AI ready. Yeah? The second part, when I say yes to the question, you need to have accountability. What we need to see is if a service provider is helping enterprise navigate through this AI journey, they need to show the reality to the enterprise, show them the mirror, are they even AI ready, lay out the whole AI journey for them, talk about the pitfalls. Don't go for a moonshot, go for smaller kind of impactful milestones which result in an outcome. Yeah? And that's primarily how it kind of goes. Coming back to your the Ferrari analogy, I'd like to kind of call this up. So if I would like to go and pick up a Ferrari, so the first thing I would do is I would go for a test drive, right? It's going to be kind of very smooth experience, great experience. That's what a successful pilot is all about. When you talk about an AI successful pilot, you talk about it's a beautifully orchestrated AI use case in a controlled environment. But when rubber meets the road, the reality is completely different, right? You talk about data quality. I'm sure a lot of leaders kind of spoke about this in the first half today. There are data quality issues. The infrastructure is not scalable. You have both modern and legacy systems in your enterprise which don't talk to each other. And last but not the least, not to forget, the workforce. Is your workforce even ready to start building AI systems? So there are a lot of these kind of hurdles which I think the service providers today are actually doing an AI readiness assessment for global enterprises. And it is imperative for these global enterprises to work closely with the service providers to understand where they stand today and how can service providers enable these enterprises to get to the kind of outcome or the vision that they have laid out for themselves. That's my take.
Next. So I'm going to be more direct. So to answer your question, yes, providers are promising moon and they are probably delivering something on the planet, maybe the closest is the Domino's pizza in 30 minutes, but that's about it. I think the challenge if you really see, and the answer is two-part, the way I would basically do this. One is what Prabhakar talked about, that if I use in my own words, there is a world of difference between the demo and the real world. Data quality, integrations, infrastructure, variety of products, landscape, etc. All of that comes to the scenario. And you see a demo which works very smoothly. And you see the real world, it doesn't quite get there. But the second thing is probably something which many organizations, both on the provider side as well as on the enterprise, are not probably looking at. So when you look at the technology change, and that actually happened during the internet era, that happened during the mobile era. It's also happening in the AI. Only thing is AI is moving very fast. So the pace of technology change is very high. When you start to look into all the LLMs, the way it's coming through, all the core AI organizations which are building up the foundational layers, they are going at a very rapid speed. The deployment is skidding through right now. So there's a massive gap when you look at the technology change as well as on the deployment. And that gap is what results in the disruption, and the disruption actually ends up impacting providers. It will also impact the enterprises. And we have seen through the previous two disruptions also many enterprises end up pivoting the model. Many enterprises unfortunately get sidelined from the leadership positions to what they have to serve the customer. But that's really the key as to how you can do it. A simple example, if I have to bring down to the ground and reality, is as we all most of us interface with the software applications around it, how many of us, when we look into the AI as just building up the features or using it for efficiency, compared to building up an agentic AI interface on top of it? And that's where I think the difference of the disruption really lies.
No, great points, Pankaj and Prabhakar. I think a little provocative to the enterprise side of the equation as well, in terms of are you really AI ready and the accountability factor with disruption. So by the time we plan and get AI ready and stuff like that, the disruption has already happened. So Iti and Rahul, for the enterprise side of the equation, you represent the buyers. Providers tell us AI is plug and play, growth engine, so they're selling obviously. But in the tranches of retail and food and pharma, the reality is often siloed data and cultural assistance, back to the roads, with the test drives and stuff. Are the enterprises being too slow? Or are the solutions being offered simply not enterprise grade yet?
I don't think enterprises are too slow. We're just underestimating the complexity of change we are expecting in the enterprise. At the same time, I also believe that many solutions are not enterprise ready yet. Let me talk about that a bit more. So, what really creates the value? My job as an enterprise is not to deploy the AI. I want to solve a customer problem. I want to improve my operation. And the value gets created by one or two things. One is by integrating AI into the decision systems. And secondly, the organization changing how they really operate. To me, it's a problem of org transformation and not the tech deployment. And this is where the skill actually fits. The examples of people like Amazon who embedded those AI in their platform, which results into what customer sees, what gets priced, what supply chain response in real time, and that's what makes it different. We have also an example like Watson Healthcare, which struggled to scale because it could not really embed with fragmented data systems, legacy systems, and distributed ownership of decision making. So as long as we continue to ask the question of how fast we are deploying AI, we will continue to have this debate and we'll have imperfect answers. The real question is to say how fast or how successfully you are changing decision and how fast you're talking to the organization, that's where the real difference will come into play. That's where you see a difference in how value gets created.
Great. You think?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with what Rahul had to say. I'm actually going to go back to one of the points that you made about that. You know, when I think about enterprise readiness, right? We talked about, you know, the enterprise, the playbook, the AI readiness, data quality, not touching it. You all know data is messy, and you know we're not going to belabor that fact. Yes, that is something that enterprises need to be ready for. But I'm coming back to that AI playbook point, right? We just spoke about decisions being embedded. How are you going to create value? Who are the people who are finally going to be using these systems? These people, let's say for retail, it will ideally be a category manager or a supply planner, right? These are the folks who are actually going to be using this. Now, obviously, there is an organizational immune response to this, right? We are trying, you know, the folks who are going to be using this are trying to figure out how is my job going to change? What is going to happen to my job, right? A good pitch or, you know, a good sell is where someone has also thought through those pieces, right? How is work changing, right? What will AI automate? What will AI automate? How does your new role look like? How can you still continue to add value to the organization? I think that's one point, because in AI playbooks, yes, we see a lot of the, is your data is ready, you have the infrastructure, all of that. But then it's that one piece where what does the future of decision making look like for you as XYZ? If we have some of that figured out, right, that's where, and that's again, it's a hand-in-hand problem. An enterprise and a provider, right? So let's say if we decided, hey, by the way, let's do this together. It's a hand-in-hand problem. Put some thought around that. So when you're having the conversation that we're going to, you know, embed this into the decision system, so that you can now look at deeper insights, or you can now look at the big picture. You know, when I'm from retail, we keep saying nobody was thinking 𝗏𝗏 was going to become a big thing, but 𝗏𝗏 was the biggest thing in the retail, right? So that you can go look at those trends which were missing previously, right? So I think that's where it kind of comes from.
Interesting perspectives. I think the two sides of the equation are, the common thing is everybody's running. I think it's a pace that you know, both sides of the equation are after, and solving different kinds of problems for different kinds of audiences. But you know, adopting that while being agile, to Rahul's point, and doing everything that you talked about in terms of readiness with the organization, I guess, is the crux of the whole thing and the cream of it. So let's talk about a different, very related topic, especially around you know, rewriting the playbook and the reset, right? Let's talk about the CFO in the room. We often ask, what is the ROI? Yeah, but look at Anthropic, right? When they developed Claude, they didn't start with a spreadsheet showing 15% efficiency gain. It was massive, and a risky bet on safety and core intelligence. It was a capability bet, right? So the question for you all is, asking for a traditional ROI on AI a sign of dying playbook? If you wait for the ROI to be proven, haven't you already lost the disruption game? You guys talked about agility and pace at which disruption is happening. So have we lost the disruption game? I'll start with you, Rahul. In sectors like omni-channel retail, how do you justify a Claude-style risky bet to a board that wants quarterly certainty?
I have a very strong point of view on this one. Not having an ROI in my mind is irresponsible. There is no real world in which you can actually get it. Whether you are a startup going for your next funding round, you are an established player looking for a capital allocation, you cannot shy away from that problem. Getting funding, navigating the organization is part of our role. If we are not getting funding, we are not telling the story correctly. The problem happens when we want to put same ROI framework for every kind of thing, and that's why suddenly really happens. So, for think about this thing. So, the real question is not ROI. The real question is, what is the value we are creating, who we are creating it for, and what conviction we have that will actually deliver the result? And that question nobody can escape from. If you are shying from that, you are actually missing the point. There could be different types of bet. Some of them are business bets. I want to do my knowledge. That is a short-term impact. It needs to tie back to the end. I want to create a new channel in which consumers will interact differently. That's a long-term bet. The ROI may not necessarily be 3 months or 6 months. If I take an example of my own company, when we decided to build an app 12 years back, the ROI was never about 3 quarters, 3 years on the way. Today that's our biggest goal. Some bets will be long-term, and the way we measure the ROI is very, very different than what's coming to the next quarter. Even the economic also. They also have a value question. Just the milestones and the progress were very, very different. So I think we have to be bold, we have to have a clarity of saying what we are solving, what value we are bringing, and then the value will come. And the onus of telling the story, getting the funding, like this, can't be anything by saying, hold up to
Q-Rab, I'll go to 𝗖𝗽 and then come to the provider side next.
Stole most of my points, so. But yeah, I kind of agree with that fact. See, and most of us today, we have to think about ROI, and more importantly, most of us are constantly working with CFOs and the board to figure out what's the right way to go ahead. So not having that point, it doesn't work, and you have to have that view. But I completely agree on that one point, that there is long-term capability building, right? That is one thing that needs to be very clear. And now, how do I make a pitch for a long-term capability building? Well, that's not going to be your efficiency building, right? So what's for efficiency? You're going to start showing those ROIs. You're going to start showing those numbers very quickly, right? But then there is long-term, and that's where, I think a lot of us would see that, there's something called like the innovation budget, right? Now, in the innovation budget, now obviously no one's going to just put everything in the innovation budget. But if in the innovation budget, you were actually doing this math, and you could say, hey, I'm going to put these that are pure like efficiency gains, and then these are my long-term bets, right? The efficiency gains, they're going to start showing up. The automation of a report or a complete workflow, which is a simpler workflow, again, I'll reiterate that. Some of those things will start showing up. So your CFO is also comfortable that she put 5 projects or he put 10 projects there. Of that, some percent of the projects have started giving me returns. And then these are the long-term bets. If you say everything is long-term in innovation, then obviously that becomes a bit of an uncomfortable situation for the CFO or for the board. And honestly, no one is saying no to AI. No one is saying, every board, no one is saying no to AI. But everyone is saying assessment, impact, that's important for us.
Thank you. Okay, what do you think? Especially in terms of disruption, by the time we do all this, does the game change? What are your thoughts on the ROI?
The game changes. So I think, first of all, I agree with both of you. I think there's an efficiency play, and the efficiency play will deliver value literally in a quarter itself when you do it. But I think the larger thing, if we have to kind of recognize the fact that the AI disruption is changing the operating model, is changing the business models in many cases. And in some scenarios, for some of the providers, it will also change the customer, because the customer they are selling may not exist. If the customer's customer value, they have to go in. And to that play, one has to kind of go deeper into and look at what is the end customer value which we are generating. How do I kind of create that particular value and build that? There is no way ROI is. It's become more of an existential question after 12-18 months, and that's the disruption.
So just to follow up on that one point that you said, how do you put value to just getting out of it?
You have to basically put a value saying that if you are not doing this, you may not survive up to 18 months. So it's like an hygiene factor. If people don't do this, you may not exist.
Thanks, Prabhakar.
Well, I think all our panelists we agree ROI is needed. But you need to find a balance between ROI and being bold in terms of how do you go ahead and kind of put that whole capability play. Yeah. Having said that, from a value perspective, I feel it is more of persona driven. Let's say a CTO. A CTO as a persona For them, it's more about how do I bring in AI to optimize my operations? Can I kind of look at a cost takeout strategy which can fund some of my large engagement initiatives, or something like he said, innovation budget, right? Can I look at a cost takeout strategy to fund my innovation budget? The CFO will be very happy because you're not going to go back and ask for additional funding. On the contrary, from a long-term perspective, if you have to look at it, most of us, we kind of managing services. What's the market share at the end of the day? If you need to be ahead of the curve, you need to kind of go and capture that market share. So for that, you need to be different. Look at Anthropic. You took that example of Anthropic. The product that they launched was a capability. But for us, we're coming from the services business. For us, serving the customer is a capability. So how do you kind of leverage something like an Anthropic to better your customer experience, to sell better and make it more relevant to improve your market share? That's how value is perceived, right? So that's where a business versus a tech. The personas are different, the value propositions should be different, and I think your use cases or your kind of roadmaps or whatever you want to build, these need to be aligned to those personas. That's my point.
No, great point. You have something else to add? Yeah, please.
So, Anthropic is not only selling capabilities, it's also selling capabilities to replace those offshore or other consulting resources as is. So, where would the existence be?
So, I'll put it this way, right? So, for me, if I'm going to use Anthropic, I would want to kind of look at what are the tasks that I'm going to eliminate versus the jobs that Anthropic may eliminate. For me, if I'm just going to put myself in let's say a technical role, right? If I'm an architect and I need to design some kind of a system, a platform, there are going to be multiple permutations and combinations that I have in my head. So for me, at the end of the day, if I have to do it manually, it's going to take a lot of time. On the contrary, can I use Anthropic to do these permutations and combinations and come back to me with what are the positives or the negatives, the pros and cons of every iteration? That's a way of me using Anthropic to make myself more relevant, right? So for me, I am going to be using Anthropic as an enabler. So I don't need to kind of consider Anthropic as a competition for me, but I need to mostly look at how do I kind of leverage Anthropic to make myself better. That's how I would kind of do it.
Perfect.
Can I add one thing?
Yeah.
So, very broadly speaking, about 15-20 companies are in the space of taking long-term bets. They can think about building to build a future, invest heavily ahead without worrying about the short-term ROI, right? And that those companies obviously dominate the narrative. But the remaining 70% companies are still tied back to valuation around P multiple, your growth rate, right? So both of them approach will be very, very different. What do you tie back to? You tie back to P multiple or growth rate or calculation. Otherwise, we have the same framework. I think it's
Great. No, thanks. I realized that was a hard question, so appreciate everyone sharing candid insights there. We'll move on to the next set of questions. So, Rahul, let's start with you. If you are a leader today and you don't have an AI epiphany by lunch, are you obsolete by dinner?
clock is ticking. the pace, the velocity is obviously, it's transformative. I'm not saying between lunch and dinner, but if you have to by lunch and you don't launch by Monday, I think you are in the irreparable spot. So I think you have to move fast. It's just not, it's not an option.
So you'll be more than a meal, but it's not more than 3 meals.
So if you look at the difference in the leaders or people who are actually driving AI impact versus not, the difference is not more than 12 to 18 months of investment. By and large. Remove the opportunity. And that difference is only going to get wider. So if you don't start now, I think you're going to be for sure.
Great. Prabhakar, in 5 years, will AI augmented work actually be better for the employee, or is this just a way to de-skill the workforce?
5 years is a long way. I'm talking about the next 12 to 18 months. Anyways, so the way I looked at it, so going back to the last previous question that I had, so I just want to elaborate on that. It's all about the intent, right? How are you going to use AI, or how are you seeing AI? If you're going to see, or if you're going to use AI to replace your judgment, you're out of the game. On the contrary, if you're going to kind of use AI to get your mundane manual tasks out of the way, and you're creating more capacity for yourself to do much more productive things, more value-driven kind of outcomes. That's how I see AI is going to kind of help, right? So for us, at the end of the day, being being a service provider, we are trying to drive that mindset. It's all about putting that mindset into the workforce. While everybody is definitely having that fear, will AI replace my job? But the reality is we need to get our workforce strategy in place. We need to get our workforce more AI ready. And for that, start with the mindset. Get your workforce to start thinking like an entrepreneur, right? It's no longer about doing some development, doing some testing, doing some mundane tasks, but start looking at how do I drive value across the value stream. Start investing in understanding the business processes. Start looking at how do I plug in AI as part of your business process to get that outcome. And finally, it boils down to, can I drive value to my end customer? So that's how I feel that this is something that we need to do. There is a lot of kind of road ahead. We need to catch up. Being even a service provider, I don't think our workforce is ready, but we are on that journey. And I feel that both enterprises and service providers need to work in tandem to see how do we kind of create that narrative.
Very fantastic to hear that the providers are also thinking about their own transformation at the same time that they're selling. So appreciate that. Pankaj, what's one AI solution being sold today that you think is complete vaporware?
I'll give you two.
Okay, all right.
So if a provider comes to you and says that we'll give you a fully autonomous operations, run away. They are well there for the check. It's not going to happen. This is not the reality of today. If somebody comes and says, this AI solution is plug and play, it's not going to happen. Please run away from those providers.
Absolutely, those are very candid. Thanks. 𝗖𝗽, what's the biggest hidden cost of moving from one pilot to full-scale production?
Quite a few hidden costs there, but I'm going to keep it brief since it tend to be brief. I think the hidden cost that we have to think about is that pilots are curated. Production is the wild west. And what I mean by that is you have to, when you're thinking about production, you have to think about accountability, consistency, recovery, rollback mechanisms. All of that needs to be thought about, right? So if you're not thinking about that, that's a hidden cost you've not factored in. It's actually, getting all these tools deployed, that's 10% of the cost, but then there comes the prompt brittleness. The minute the tool hits production, oh, I don't think of this edge case, we are reiterating, constantly reiterating. You thought that, we thought we're going to spend so much in getting this pilot to production, and then it's just about maintenance, so that curve drops like that, but no, that curve doesn't drop like that. That you have to factor in the human beings or the human in the loop who will be doing the evaluation, the reiteration, the correction, who's accountable for all the results that are coming out. All of that has to be thought through, and those are hidden costs that we need to be aware of. Though, considering Madhavi, you work for 𝗏𝗏, and you've obviously your career, you've spent so much time in this. What do you think is the biggest hidden cost?
This is something I didn't anticipate. It's a question to the moderator, which I wasn't ready for. But I think you're right. I think there are a lot of hidden costs, right? What we see, at least what I've seen in my experience, is above and beyond what you already mentioned. One is the disruption Pankaj has been alluding to throughout the conversation, right? The time that it takes for you to go from pilot to production, pilot to scale, disruption might have happened. So then how do you kind of take care of it? That's a hidden cost. This is above and beyond all the technology costs, cloud costs, and all that kind of stuff, right? These are really hidden, so the disruption can take over. The other aspect that Rahul and Prabhakar, both of them have been alluding to in terms of AI readiness of the company, as you scale, and especially as you scale across functions, across geographies, across multicultural environments, that equation changes, and what you see in a pilot is not what you will see in full scale. So how have you accounted for that as you scale up? The local nuances and the literacy around how you adopt. Adoption is a big hidden cost. The slower the curve, the more costs it's consuming, right? So I think these are some other very hidden costs that we need to kind of keep in our minds, especially given that it's a technology space that we're dealing with. But thanks for being unconventional as well. So let's wrap. I think we're down to like 4 minutes. So quick question, same question for everybody, please. Let's give the audience one thing they should stop doing tomorrow if they want to survive the epiphany. Forget what they should start. What should they really abandon? Pankaj, will start with you.
They should stop looking at AI as a feature development and really look at the business model overall and how to kind of involve it.
Thank you. Ithik?
Stop hoarding knowledge. We're all, information technology folks and AI engineers and data scientists. We know this. Stop hoarding knowledge. The best use cases are going to come when you share this openly and when you talk about how this can help build cross-functional teams where you can openly discuss this, so that all that fear of job loss and all of that actually starts mitigating because people now know how it all works.
Thank you. Rahul?
I think stop selling the magic wand and start telling what really it takes to make an impact.
Thanks, Rahul.
From a practitioner lens, stop copy pasting from what AI gives you. Start using your judgment. Human brain is much more kind of capable of what an AI agent can kind of do. So leverage your agent to kind of help minimize your manual activities and start using it more creatively. That's how I would do it.
Thank you.
Madhavi, what should we stop doing, Madhavi?
Sorry?
What should we stop doing, Madhavi?
What should you stop doing? Stop thinking about ROI, take some bets, I guess.
Thank you.
Thanks. That was a fun conversation. Thank you all for being candid and open. I think the experience kind of really helps all of us collectively. The new playbook isn't about the model you use. It's about the friction you're willing to endure to change your operating model. And thanks, panelists, for being uncomfortable with us today. Really enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.